Good morning. I'm Ramanamurthy. I'm with School of Economics in Social Sciences, University of Hyderabad. And I'll be talking today on introduction to research in social sciences. Social sciences is a broad description of a varied set of disciplines that deal with the human behavior in the society. The methodology and the methods across these disciplines have certain common structures as well as differences. These branches are neither mutually exclusive nor completely separate branches of knowledge, even though there are sometimes some claims are made that they are exclusive from each other. On the brighter side, there has been an increasing emphasis on interdisciplinary research, and thankfully universities are encouraging interdisciplinary research courses also. The usual disciplines of social sciences can be named as political science, economics, history, anthropology, and geography. The goal of social science is to help understand better and improve the well-being of society and humanity. Social sciences are modern disciplines that came up to understand, explain, and advise modern societies and those in transition towards modernity. The legitimacy of these disciplines are normally derived from the scientific method they deploy to draw credibility and justification in their explanation of social phenomena. The word scientific itself has traversed in its context and its meaning since the 17th century. The success of Newtonian revolution in physics, accelerated development of mathematics, chemistry, engineering, and biology on one hand, and discovery of distant continents, navigational technologies, and growth of maritime trade have changed the traditional way of life and society. Worldviews hitherto defined the moral and religious understanding are replaced with explanations of objective reason and experience, giving birth to a new universal methodology of research called philosophy of science. The new movement of science had tried to prescribe a common universal method of establishing truth, and may it be natural phenomena or a social phenomena. The influence of this new philosophy was so powerful that every discipline tried to claim to be part of it, and for the acceptance and legitimacy. Hence, the birth of social sciences took place when what science should be was normatively being defined. Social science also tried to mimic the rules of sciences and derived their credibility. The utilitarian philosophy that is associated with the capitalist nature of modern societies, which laid emphasis on creating material wealth, also shaped the teleology of the new science. However, the enterprise of knowledge production soon proved to be a much more complex affair than natural sciences, as social sciences had to conceive the ideal type of society that seeks to satisfy economic needs on one hand, and the one that exists and one that is evolving. Societies are again evolving entities. Therefore, dynamics and direction of their evolution are to be traced, explained, transformed, and justified. The social phenomena are complex and sometimes conflict-ridden, and sometimes involve certain social values and ethical judgments. These additional aspects of social science warranted much more versatility of methods than a predefined one method to fit all. Fruitfulness and meaningfulness are taken as touchstones of the methods of inquiry. We now give an account of nature and scope of different social sciences, social science disciplines that give a reader an idea about similarity and differences in the epistemology, philosophy, and methodology of different social sciences. A quick description of logic, method, and telos of these disciplines help one to assimilate the intersection of the disciplines, broad commonalities of the scientific methodology of theory, validation, and justification across disciplines. Let's take economics. Economics was known as political economy and existed as a part of moral philosophy until 18th century. It began emerging as a distinct field with emergence of capitalism. The standard concerns of the discipline are national income, growth, political economy of development, determinants of international trade, market mechanism, employment, international payment systems, monetary and fiscal policy, banking and financial systems, nature of a firm, organization, development economics, distribution of national income, economic systems, and structural transformation, etc. Apart from the core areas, several interdisciplinary and applied areas of research have come up, such as agricultural economics, industrial economics, financial economics, institutional economics, environmental economics, labor economics, urban economics, rural development, gender economics, economics of discrimination, economic history, agrarian studies, etc. and etc. Economic discipline adopts multiple approaches to understand economic behavior, such as individual consumer behavior or a firm behavior, often referred as methodological individualism, aggregate analysis in terms of social classes called macro approach, which often sometimes contend and eventually is reconciled with the micro approach. Rationality of individual behavior is normatively sometimes assumed, while it is contended as blind, while actual behavior could be what dictated by a social class and its location. Similarly, there are teleological battles, ideological battles exist over option of state interference into the market mechanism based on free contractual agreements of rational individuals. Whereas the institutional and historical understanding also suggests and necessitates critical state intervention for achieving optimal social welfare midst of market failure and inefficiencies, which directly contends that of laissez-faire. There are also again approaches that shun interdisciplinarity to claim exclusivist existence, referred to as homo economicus, while it is seriously contended by alternative approaches of historical inductive methods of studying evolutionary nature of institutions which are interdisciplinary and economies. Even the mainstream economists nowadays opine that there is a need to bring in the understanding from disciplines like psychology, history, and sociology. The dominant methodological approach in economics has been hypothetico-deductive method for hypothesis building and empirical verification and normative evaluation for validation. Comparatively, the discipline has relative advantage of having quantification of data. Thereby, it facilitates use of some mathematics and statistics compared to other social sciences. However, there is also an allegation that it has depended on pure deduction and a priorism and refused to test many of its core hypotheses and theories. Influence of positivism, which is one of the philosophy of science, has been quite influential on economics, which made an emphatic use of statistical methods, forgetting the fact that data and facts themselves are generated with an a priori reasoning and theoretical view. Hence, sometimes stylized facts are designed to prove hypotheses. There are also often disciplinary pretensions to claim objectivity of research with a risk of an overreach. Application of statistical tools often tend to facilitate prediction through simulation, which can become hazards of an overreach of a behavioral discipline. Therefore, economic theories and their prescriptive policy stances often require a critical evaluation. Therefore, despite strong tendencies to narrow down the concerns and scope of economic disciplines, there is equally strong tradition of the critical analysis from the alternative paradigms within the discipline. A researcher needs to have a critical appreciation of alternative schools of thought, conceptual clarity, empirical rigor, and reflective interpretation. If you look at political science studies various political aspects of society and the nation. The scope of the discipline covers various aspects of political systems, contemporary politics, political thought, state, public policy, changing party system, electoral trends and politics, citizenship, foreign policy, jurisprudence, human rights, constitution, governance, legislations, legislative bodies, federalism, political representation, voting behavior, public choice, etc. Many of these other issues often are interdisciplinary. The breadth and length of the scope of political science necessitates methodological pluralism. The discipline uses several methodologies in its epistemology, such as idealism, realism, structuralism, structural functionalism, behavioralism, discourse analysis, and critical realism. The commonality of the discipline in terms of methodology with other social sciences is the use of hypothetico-deductive model, as we stated earlier, with an empirical validation. While making hypothesis a theory involves thick deductive approach, sometimes may even use dialectical logic as opposed to formal logic. Empirical validation often relies on verification and induction. Finally, a normative evaluation of theory and evidence, which relies on ethics, morality, and social and political values, are integral to its epistemology. Methods of empirical validation in political science can involve statistical, ethnographic, historical, archival, and inductive methods, besides engaging with pure thought on a deductive logic. Let's come to the third social science, which is sociology. Sociology is one among the social sciences concerned with a scientific study of society. A scientific study implies and includes that any particular study has a clear-cut objectives, methodology, and logic governing the whole inquiry, which can make possible an intersubjective understanding between the researcher and the interlocutors of the study or the research program. Such ought to be the intersubjective understanding that even if there is a disagreement, there should be an agreement on where the disagreement has arisen or is bound to arise. Thus, the problems could be over the theoretical frame deployed by the researcher, any particular concept or its operationalization, the type of method and research technique used for the research, etc. Sociology involves varieties of methods, as sociological research crucially depends not only on epistemological issues but equally on political values, politics, ideology, etc., determining the researcher's thought process. For example, studying caste, culture, belief systems, family, kinship, associations, labor unions, relation between workers and managers, all these aspects, including the epistemological ones, are interconnected. These diversities in intellectual and political temperament, crucially the way research questions are posed, the concept defined, and techniques of data collection adopted, and the results of the research which themselves can interpret it differently. Regrettably, this is the case with most social research. Certitude often eludes the social research program due to many reasons. For one, social research can hardly be undertaken in a controlled environment such as a laboratory. The persons being studied are not objects but subjects. Human behavior is replete with rationality and irrationality, capricious or otherwise, and sundry are the factors. Even person's consciousness is largely a matter of how it has been constituted by culture, for example. Paradoxically, this can mean a high degree of predictability as well as its failure. Constant conjecturing becomes a default method of research. Sociological research has, however, specific aspects clearly. First, it has emphasized the issue that sociological research is different from physical research. Second, a priori method to begin with some of the assumptions or as the given things precedes before we even decide the appropriate methods or techniques to employ the data collection. An efficient researcher will attempt to first establish the logic, collect the data and analyze the data as per the theory and interpret the results. The consequential disagreements and theoretical and empirical differences will be debated over its relative merits. This brings us to the fourth discipline of social sciences, which is anthropology. Close on the heels of sociology, the discipline of anthropology began its epistemological journey studying primordial and primitive societies, evolution of societies, changes in the human features, beliefs, cultures, and so on. Sometimes the discipline is accused of treading on the colonial and racist understanding of societies of the world for indulging in apolitical understanding and functionalist descriptive approach. However, the discipline in most parts of the world has recovered its status and succeeded in emerging as one of the most advanced fields of social inquiry, no longer confined to the vestiges of studying primitive or backward and traditional societies, but studying the contemporary modern societies from a critical perspective. The strength of the field can be stated as its method of inquiry, which is the ethnography. That a quantitative approach can never reach the depths of the reality. Today, anthropologists have managed to succeed in making their discipline the most interdisciplinary. The USP of the anthropology has been its method of ethnography, which involves a careful and a comprehensive narration of all the relevant information of human lives, bringing the richness of critical details and social connections that entail human decision making and behavior. So blended with economics, politics, linguistics, history and geography, today anthropology has erased the traditional divisions of interdisciplinary boundaries of social sciences for a meaningful and fruitful understanding. Since the strength of the discipline lies in the method, that is the method of ethnography, which itself involves participation, description and interpretation, it also entails hazards of subjectivity, lack of generalization and focus on particularity. Therefore, it is highly successful in highlighting the differences rather than the generality of perspectives or a view. However, intersubjective methods shared by practitioners of the discipline can also overcome these hazards of ambiguity and equivocation. The strength of anthropological research is the understanding of the social process of the phenomenon. Let's come to the subject of history. History is a typical field of social sciences which involves far more interdisciplinary aspects than any other field. Rather, history becomes necessary for all other social sciences as much as history itself gets constituted by them. Purpose, understanding, interpretation, sources of data for constructing history involves political, philosophical, economic and sociological theory. It's a convention to divide history into ancient, medieval and modern eras. The subject of historical inquiry ranges from politics, state, society, religion, social systems, economy, medicine, technology, environment, social movements, social struggles, biographies, art, culture, language, science and so on. Imaginably, history often is truly the most interdisciplinary discipline of philosophy. Most poignant aspect of historical research is that it involves telos more than any other sister disciplines. Histories are always written for understanding the current context, either in the opposite or in support of a political or a sociological ones. Since, along with the time and the evolution of society and nation, telos also change and history also gets rewritten. Information sources for historiography may range from well-preserved, authentic and direct sources to indirect, elusive, circumstantial and unclear forms. Official records, letters, diaries, newspapers and other published sources are the usual source of historiography for the modern period. As one goes back in time, one has to depend on religious scriptures, one has to strain to literary sources, inscriptions of warriors, archaeological evidences, etc., which often involves specialized skills in language, literature, knowledge of religions, knowledge of older forms of language, skills in deciphering, etc. This brings us to the final discipline of social science, which is geography. Geography is yet another important field which has re-emerged on the lines of anthropology from the traditional field of physical and political geography. The discipline has redefined its scope and boundaries by introducing human geography, which involves reimagining the space not only in terms of physical features but a physical plus sociological space that gives a deeper understanding of a region, whatever the way it is defined. It could be urban, rural, state, province, south, north, male, female, demographic space, etc. The discipline, following a pluralistic method in its epistemology, combines a variety of methods of empirical validation. Adaptability, flexibility and eclectic approach is often considered the virtue of this new discipline. The discipline could penetrate into multiple subjects, filling the gaps left open by the mainstream social sciences disciplines. Given the repertoire of statistical methods to qualitative methods to ethnography, the discipline aims at the fruitfulness of the research program. Thus, we have so far discussed the scope and nature of research in 5 different disciplines of social sciences, which is varied and which has to suit according to the nature of the discipline and the context and so on. Thank you.